So CSIS has convened this and put together this commission on trade. Senator, what exactly is this, and what are you trying to do here?
Well, hopefully we're going to change the world, because
I'm for that.
We are really in a radically different world right now. The American people know that things are confused. They don't know quite how much of a stake they've got. 1 out of 5 jobs is involved with international trade. That's an enormous number of Americans that are at risk. And we seem to have lost a handle on how to organize trade that it really advantages the United States. It is fundamentally important that this country lead, not just for the world, but for our own population. I think for me, that's the essence of what we're going to try to address.
Well, this is almost about more than trade, isn't it? I mean, it's about what is America's role in the world. Do we want to continue to have a leadership role? Mm-hmm. Some people are saying, well, the rest of the world's played us for suckers. It probably costs us too much to be the world leader. Maybe we need to step back. And I think a lot of what we're seeing on the trade front right now represents that discussion. What would you say, Charlotte?
Well, look, the United States created a post-war environment highly conducive to its economic interests. And that environment today remains highly conducive to American interests, giving the U.S. extraordinary leverage, giving the U.S. extraordinary wealth, and enriching the world at the same time, including with respect to the alleviation of poverty. If you're going to shake that up and toss it out, you better have a substitute system in mind, because American companies don't thrive in environments that aren't based on rule of law. They don't thrive in environments that are not transparent, that operate in an opaque way. They don't thrive in an environment which is unstable. And yet, if you throw away this post-war confection without a substitute, without understanding where it might have gone wrong, what we need to fix, what we need to change, if you don't have a substitute, then you are really throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, Fred, is there a substitute out there?
Well, I think there has to be a substitute for it, Bob, because at the end of the day, the United States simply can't produce the type of wealth and income that American citizens aspire to, absent access to world markets. I mean, we've got about 330 million people here in this country. If you take NAFTA in it, it gets, 475 million. There are an additional almost 7 billion people in the world outside of Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And after World War II, as you mentioned, we pushed, along with the Allies, what became known as the GATT and the IMF and the World Bank, which brought this prosperity that the world has enjoyed. And now it's all at risk because of China's rise and the new policies that are being pushed by many different administrations around the world, including the Trump administration. So that's the real issue we're looking at.
I can't think of any other issue that is not touched in some way by trade. And yet, I think trade remains the issue that is least understood by most Americans. I mean, you run into people who say, well, who actually pays the tariffs? And we're being led to believe that China's paying these tariffs. That's not so.
No. U.S. consumers are paying, U.S. businesses are paying the tariffs.
Because they're the importers.
They're the importers, and the importers pay the tariffs. Now, the manufacturer in China might absorb some of the costs himself, but over time, these tariffs have been in place now for a long time, and the rates keep going up. All of that is pure cost to the United States. So the IMF and the OECD have already calculated that any benefit people in the United States families got from the tax cut, that's gone, because you've paid more for the typical products you buy against which tariffs have been applied.
For me, the most important thing we got to do is to tell the American people, you've got a big stake in this thing. You and your family are at risk. I mean, the irrationality of saying that tariffs are going to hurt somebody else is so crazy. It's a tariff that is, in truth, a tax. It's an tax on Americans. And it's the dumbest of all approaches. We tax Americans, but the government doesn't get any revenue. We lose both ways. It's really stupid. And it's counterproductive because you're hurting your allies. You're destroying your friendships and your relationships. One of the things we can do in this commission, I think, is to talk about how important, really important, for the average person in this country it is to get ourselves back on track in trade. Open some doors, do some business, get some jobs.
Well, thank you all very much.